Champions Cup, folks. Glasgow against Leicester, and it is Glasgow who get the result pretty emphatically in the end, 43 points to 19. But I feel like Leicester made a heck of a lot of try-saving tackles in this game, and if not for those, the scoreline potentially could have been blown out a wee bit more. A few cards, and a interesting looking quarterfinal for Glasgow. But before we get to that, go through some of the key events and stats of this game, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Leicester actually went out to a pretty decent start. They got the lead in this game. They had them all. Cracknell was able to reach out just barely, but managed to get himself over the line. Missed conversion, but 5 points to 0 lead, which is good for them because they're pretty decent underdogs going into this one. And they held out Glasgow for quite some time. Glasgow put a heap of pressure on, and I feel like maybe they should have had a yellow card warning Leicester for a number of penalties conceded, or at least advantages conceded. Like Glasgow had phases, they had mauls, they had lineouts, they had taps. Well, they didn't have any points. But as I said, no yellow card warning. Eventually, Leicester's maul defence held to kind of get themselves a wee exit, but they held, kind of ran it straight back at them, did Glasgow. So eventually there was a yellow card for Leicester, but it was for Van Portfleet for a kind of deliberate knock-on. So it was in no way connected to the increasing number of penalties that Leicester were conceding. But I guess the ref kind of countered it towards that because he kind of mentioned it a bit later on. But with the man advantage, Glasgow did finally manage to punish, but it was messy. It was just kind of like an overthrown line-out, which Hastings managed to grab and then pop to Fenter, who was able to go over. So it wasn't exactly the way they planned to get it done, but it's a try. It's kind of pressure converted into some points. So 7 points to 5. Horn did go close to another after a McDowell line break, but then we had Kelly with the desperation defence, and then Matthews almost looked to have gone over as well for Glasgow, if not for a little bit of kind of obstruction at the maul. So it seemed like missed opportunity after missed opportunity for Glasgow. However, from a resulting 5-metre scrum, Vailanu was able to get it when the Glasgow pack just shoved Leicester off the ball on Leicester's own feet. Vailanu just picked it up and just barreled over. So 14 points to 5. Again, that's not a planned try. That's just your scrum pushing the opposition off the ball. So, yeah, it still counts. But it was just weird that they kind of got a couple of, I don't want to call them scrappy tries, but just, not the tries that you would have thought they were going to score given how much possession and territory they had. But 14 points to 5 is starting to look a little bit more comfortable. Less comfortable for Harry Wells because he got his shirt pulled over his head in the carry. He wouldn't have been able to see a bloody thing when his face is covered in his own shirt, but it's not something you see every day. And then there was a Leone with a hit on Matthews, which saw Matthews go off. Means I assume he may not be back for next week because he, I don't think he passed his HIA. Didn't come back on the field, that's for sure. The TMO ruled that one was no foul play because he was going in to wrap, and the player who he was tackling, Matthews, was kind of falling. You've definitely seen that kind of thing carded before, but it wasn't. It was just, I don't have a problem with it being a rugby incident because I do agree that if a guy is in a proper tackle position and makes a hit on somebody, he shouldn't be punished for just using normal tackle technique if the person you're tackling is dropping. But I don't know, that one seemed close enough that I've seen that one carded more often than not. Just the way my brain saw it anyway. But, yep, they TMO up, they look at it and clear it, no foul play. And as I said, I don't want to see cards just for the sake of cards, but just based on kind of history. Leicester did get a yellow card warning on 25 minutes for the constant penalties conceded. Rudwan made another one of these try-saving tackles for Leicester, so she was still pretty close. McDowell kind of tried to milk a high shot from Solomon Akata. Solomon Akata's not got the best tackle technique in the world. That one did kind of ride up a little bit high. I didn't think he kind of clean clocked him. It seemed like it kind of hit his shoulder and then at the last second kind of rode up. So if you wanted to be I don't want to call it a stickler, but if you wanted to be strict on the high shots, you could probably penalise that one. I don't think it would have been anything more than a penalty, but I also don't like the guys kind of milking, holding their faces and whatnot when it wasn't that bad. It's easy for me to say here. I'm not the one who got clocked in the face, but I think it's a slippery slope to go down if guys are always holding their faces to try and draw attention to the fact that they might want a penalty. But nothing came of that one. And yeah, Jack Van Portfleet had a tap tackle on a Kai Stan line break. So another bloody very close moment for Glasgow, just stopped by a bit of Leicester desperation. Cam Henderson did cop a yellow card for Leicester, though, for too many penalties conceded. Right as the clock was going into the red for halftime, Glasgow opted for 3 points. So 17-5 at halftime. I don't feel like Glasgow will be that happy with that because they had like 77% possession. Remember, they had the wind at their back in the first half. 74% territory. Like, they made 21 tackles to Leicester's 140. And yet that's not an unassailable lead given how much, opportunity Glasgow's had. The penalty count's 11-2 against Leicester. Turnovers conceded 15-3. So Glasgow have been, at times, a little bit careless and at times just shut down by some great Leicester defence. But like I said, for all those beautiful stats, the scoreline is not unassailable. Second half, though, Leicester they mucked the restart. Absolutely careless to just not catch the bloody thing. Van Portfleet, I think it was, got driven back over his own goal line. So it's a 5-metre scrum for Glasgow. They were able to punish. Ventico's close. Vailanu is able to go next phase over for a try. So 24-5. Glasgow scrum getting some pretty good pay as well. They had dominance in that area for sure. And then Stewart, who gets a bit of stick for his defending, put in a nice solid defensive shot on Stain, but next phase the Glasgow guys are able to go over with Horn sending Hastings over. So 31-5. Even the ref's whistle is broken by this point and he has to go exchange it for a new one. And straight from the restart, Glasgow got another. It kind of all fell to pieces for Leicester at this point. I mean, there was no kickies at Kyle Rowe, who was loving a carry in this game. He got a big line break, and Horn with the support line gets one for himself. So 38 points to 5. That's pretty much game over. Although Solomon Akata did get one for Leicester on 56 minutes, went through a big gap. I don't think Glasgow will be too happy with the defending for that one because it was, just a little bit easy, but it stopped the 38 unanswered points from Glasgow at that point to make it 38-12, and they almost had a quick fire double of their own. Freddie Stewart with a big carry beats a defender and then passes it to Kelly, but Kelly just shells the pass. And it was a pretty good pass. If they score there, I still don't think they win the game, but they probably make it a bit more interesting. Leicester had an intercept later on, put some pressure on Glasgow. Glasgow had their own yellow card warning. Liebenberg was able to go over for a close-range try after a tap, so 38-19. Stain had a line break again for Glasgow. He was still looking sharp. Hassel Collins managed to kind of wrap his arms around Stain before he could free the ball up, so potentially another try saved. Fenter, though, did get a double after maul and scrum pressure from Glasgow, so 43-19. That's the final scoring. McDowell almost had one as well, but he grounded the ball ever so slightly as it had hit the dead ball line, so no try. Comical moment at the end where Glasgow kicked it out when the game was still not over, so they had to set a scrum, but ultimately, Glasgow pretty deserving winners, and as I said, could have had a few more. There's a number of missed opportunities, either be it, drop balls, both sides really, but also a few desperation kind of last-ditch tackles, just sticking. Possession finishes 62-38 and territory 52-48, so Leicester had a fair bit more possession and territory in the second to kind of bring a bit more balance to those numbers. Turnovers conceded as 20-14 come full-time, so Glasgow less ball, but also less drop ball in the second half. Line breaks is 8-3. Defenders beaten as 41-12. So some really nice attacking numbers for Glasgow. Kicking in this game was pretty low, only 15 apiece. Usually most teams would hit around the 20 mark. So a little bit less kicking. Tackle percentages. Glasgow's at 90%, which is pretty cracking stuff. Kyle Rowe, 154 metres, 8 defenders beaten, 2 clean breaks. Even Pollard had 74 metres in this one for Leicester. Leone had 25 tackles. 75 would be nice. 25 tackles and 3 turnovers, 1. Matt Ferguson had 11 for Glasgow. But the penalty count, man, 14-4. That is about as lopsided as you will ever see a penalty count go. Part of that's just the forward dominance of the Glasgow guys, especially at set piece time. But yeah, if you haven't seen the results of the previous games, turn off now, because I don't want to drop spoilers for you. But Glasgow in their quarterfinal will be away to Leinster, which will be a cracking game because there's a bit of URC rivalry between those two sides. But it'll certainly be a tough ask after Leinster's result. For me, it was overnight. I actually haven't seen any of these other games. I'm kind of looking at that one. La Rochelle and Munster is one I need to go back and watch because I haven't seen it. It was on at 4:30 in the morning. I was very tempted to get up and watch that one live. Having seen the result, I'm a little bit feeling regret that I didn't bite the bullet and get up. But hey, you guys let us know your thoughts on this game, Glasgow and Leicester. How do you think Glasgow's chances are away from home in the quarterfinals? Take care of yourself, folks, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.